The subway station was alive with the rhythm of the city, a chaotic mix of sounds, sights, and movement. It was rush hour, and the platform was flooded with people, all jostling to get to their trains. The hurried shuffle of footsteps against the cold concrete, the murmur of conversations, and the screeching sound of approaching trains filled the air. The station had a certain energy to it, like the pulse of a living thing. Everyone was in a rush, moving with purpose but in different directions, all trying to get to their destinations. Among the crowd, a young black boy, no older than 12, calmly navigated his way through the sea of bodies. His small stature made him almost invisible at first, but there was something about his steady, purposeful gait that drew attention. He wasn't running, he wasn't panicking. He simply moved through the chaos, effortlessly avoiding the crowd's jostling, his focus sharp. In front of him was a stroller, and inside it lay a small, sleeping baby. The boy was pushing the stroller with great care, his eyes constantly on the baby, ensuring it stayed secure. His hand gripped the stroller firmly, yet gently, as though protecting the little one was his most important task in the world. As the boy moved through the crowd, the atmosphere began to shift. The train was coming, and with it, the anxiety of the commuters. The closer the train came, the more the crowd surged toward the edge of the platform, desperate to catch the train and get on their way. The sound of the train grew louder, and the tension among the crowd was palpable. People squeezed tighter together, ignoring the unspoken boundaries that usually governed personal space. The closer the train got, the more frantic everyone seemed to become. The young boy's pace didn't change. His face, though youthful, showed an alertness beyond his years. He moved through the throng with the kind of calm that seemed out of place amidst the growing tension. But his calmness wasn't just a reflection of his character. It was a deep-seated focus on what mattered most, keeping the baby safe. As the train's lights appeared in the distance, the boy's grip on the stroller tightened ever so slightly. The crowd pushed forward, inching closer to the tracks, but the boy remained vigilant. The stroller was close to the edge, and he made sure to keep it safe, keeping his eyes constantly on it. And then, a cry from the stroller caught his attention, just a faint sound above the commotion around him. The baby was stirring, a soft whimper growing into something more frantic. The boy's heart raced, and his protective instincts kicked in. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the crowd, sensing something was wrong. In that moment he saw him, a man, distracted by his phone, standing dangerously close to the edge of the platform. The man was completely unaware of the approaching danger, his focus entirely on his screen, oblivious to the train now barreling toward the station. The boy's pulse quickened. Time seemed to slow as he realized what was happening. The man was about to fall, completely unaware of the impending danger. In that instant, the boy made a decision. Without hesitation, he surged forward, ignoring the chaos around him, his hand reaching for the man's arm in a last-ditch effort to save him. The crowd was still surging, oblivious to the imminent danger, but the boy, in that moment, became something more than just a child. He became a protector, a hero in the making. The boy, whose name was Malik, had always been a quiet presence in the neighborhood. Growing up in one of the city's most underfunded areas, life had never been easy for him. He lived with his mother and younger sister in a modest apartment that often felt cramped despite their best efforts to make it home. Malik's father had left when he was just a toddler, and his mother, a hard-working woman with a smile that could light up even the darkest corners of their apartment, did her best to make sure they had food, clothes, and love. but the reality of their situation was always present, and Malik knew from a young age that it would take more than just love to make ends meet. Malik took it upon himself to help out however he could. He ran errands for neighbors, helped elderly residents with groceries, and did small jobs for anyone willing to offer him a few dollars. Though he was only 12, his maturity and work ethic belied his age. His small neighborhood was tight-knit, and the people there knew him as the boy who could always be counted on. Despite his own struggles, his mother's late-night shifts, the uncertainty of their next meal, and the pressure of keeping his younger sister entertained without much to give, Malik had a kindness that shone through. He didn't complain about his situation. In fact, he rarely talked about his hardships at all. His focus was always on helping others, believing that if he could make someone else's day easier, it would somehow make his own life more bearable. Every day, Malik passed through the subway station on his way to various errands. The station, like the city itself, was filled with a diversity of people, businessmen, travelers, commuters, tourists, all rushing to get to their destinations. Malik had long ago learned how to navigate the chaos of the subway platform, even at the busiest times. It was a rhythm he had gotten used to. He would silently observe the hustle and bustle of the people around him, always on the lookout for someone in need. A lost wallet, an elderly woman struggling with heavy bags, a person in need of directions. These were all things Malik would notice, always offering a helping hand whenever possible. One day, as Malik hurriedly made his way through the crowd, he noticed a familiar figure in the distance, an imposing man walking briskly beside his assistant, talking animatedly on his phone. The man was dressed in a sharp suit, carrying himself with an air of importance that was immediately noticeable. This was Robert Whitmore, the billionaire businessman who owned much of the real estate in the city, including several buildings near Malik's neighborhood. Malik had seen him around before, but he knew nothing about the man beyond the fact that he was rich and important. Robert Whitmore was known to keep to himself, and his world was far removed from Malik's humble life. At that moment, Malik's attention shifted. As he continued to walk, he noticed something strange. A stroller, unattended, had been left behind on the platform just a few feet away from the busy scene. Malik paused, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. He looked around, trying to figure out who had left it behind. It didn't take long for him to notice the source. Robert Whitmore's baby stroller had been left behind, seemingly unnoticed by the businessman and his assistant. The baby inside the stroller was crying softly, though the sound was nearly drowned out by the noise of the crowd and the approaching train. Unaware of the oversight, Robert Whitmore continued his phone call, walking quickly, oblivious to the stroller his nanny had inadvertently left behind. Malik's instincts kicked in. He didn't know whose baby it was, but he couldn't leave a child stranded like that. Without a second thought, he moved closer to the stroller, his hand gently reaching out to steady it. The baby's cries grew louder, and Malik's protective nature immediately took over. The boy knew he had to do something. He looked up once more to spot the businessman still on the phone, and took a deep breath. Despite the crowded station and the rush of people around him, Malik knew he couldn't just stand by. The station was a rush of noise, a swirling mass of bodies moving as one, all trying to get to their destination. The train, with its sharp whistle and growing roar, was rapidly approaching, and the crowd began to edge closer to the platform's edge, eager to board. Malik's eyes stayed locked on the baby stroller as he gently pushed it toward the side, his hand still firm on the handle. The baby's cries had escalated, the sound now piercing through the clamor of the crowd, but Malik's calm remained unshaken. He moved through the crowded platform, his focus entirely on making sure the stroller didn't veer too far. But just as he reached the end of the platform, the unthinkable happened. The stroller's front wheel caught in the narrow gap between the platform and the tracks. The stroller jolted to a halt. The wheel wedged firmly in the space, leaving the baby trapped and vulnerable right at the edge. The sound of the train grew deafening, its presence felt through the vibrating tracks. The baby, now crying uncontrollably, added to the frantic tension in the air. Panic began to ripple through the crowd as people took notice, gasping and shouting as the train bore down on them. "Move it! Someone help!" a woman screamed, her voice shaking. The sight of the helpless baby and the oncoming train sent a wave of dread through the crowd. Everyone froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. The urgency of the situation was unbearable, and Malik's heart thudded in his chest, his breath quickening. He could feel time slipping away, each second making the difference between life and death. He could hear the train's whistle, louder now, as it neared its final approach. But Malik wasn't frozen in panic like the others. He wasn't paralyzed by fear. His mind moved faster than his heart could beat, his instinctual need to protect the child overriding every thought. Without a second of hesitation, he sprang into action. He dashed toward the stroller, his hands reaching for the wheel, trying to free it. With every second that passed, the gap between the platform and the train seemed to widen, an overwhelming sense of danger clinging to the air. The crowd was still yelling, urging Malik to hurry, but the boy didn't hear them. His focus was entirely on the baby, on the stroller caught in the gap, and on the roar of the train that was now only moments away. His fingers fumbled as he grabbed the wheel, trying to shift it free from the tight space. The baby's cries only spurred him to work faster, the urgency of the situation driving every movement. Finally, with a tug, Malik managed to yank the stroller forward. The wheel popped free, and in one swift, almost effortless motion, he yanked the stroller back from the edge, pulling it away from the platform just as the train thundered past. The wind from the train's rush nearly knocked him off balance, but he didn't falter. The stroller was safe, the baby unharmed, and Malik had a moment to breathe as the train continued on its way, its noise gradually fading. The crowd, which had been frozen in horror, erupted into applause, cheers, and relief. Some people immediately pulled out their phones, recording the moment on video. The boy, standing there in the aftermath of his heroic act, didn't seem to notice the attention. His focus remained solely on the baby. He adjusted the stroller, checking to make sure the infant was safe and unharmed. The baby had stopped crying, now simply whimpering in the comfort of its stroller, unaware of the danger it had just faced. Malik, in his quiet, self-assured manner, continued pushing the stroller calmly through the crowd. He didn't look for praise, didn't seek the admiration of the onlookers. The boy's actions were born of instinct and responsibility, not for recognition or glory. He simply did what needed to be done, the way he had always done. There was no fanfare, no moment of triumph for Malik, only the knowledge that he had protected the baby and ensured its safety. As he moved through the platform, the crowd parted, many people stepping aside to allow him space to continue. Some whispered in admiration, others offered thanks, but Malik kept his head down, focusing only on the stroller in front of him. The baby was safe, and that was all that mattered. His heart slowed as he reached the exit, his mission complete. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the thought, what would happen next? The commotion at the subway station was impossible to ignore. As the last echoes of the train faded and the crowd began to disperse, a tall, well-dressed man, clearly out of place among the frantic commuters, rushed toward the scene. Robert Whitmore, a millionaire businessman, had been alerted to the situation after hearing a frantic message from his assistant. The assistant, who had been with him moments earlier, had just realized that Robert's baby had been left behind on the platform. As Robert pushed through the crowd, his eyes scanned the area with panic and urgency. He didn't know exactly what had happened, but the thought of his child, left alone in a crowded subway station, filled him with dread. When he reached the platform, his heart skipped a beat. There, standing beside the stroller, was the boy, the young black boy who had just saved his baby from certain danger. Malik's hands were still on the stroller, but his posture had softened now, as if he were simply doing what came naturally. The baby, peacefully nestled in the stroller, was no longer crying. It was safe. Robert's legs nearly gave out beneath him as he took in the sight of his child. His heart swelled with relief, and a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying seemed to lift. He rushed toward Malik, his voice trembling with emotion as he knelt down next to the boy. Is she okay?" Robert asked, his breath shaky as he looked at the baby. Malik nodded quietly, still calm despite the intensity of the situation. "She's fine, sir. She just got caught in the gap, but she's okay now." Robert's eyes filled with tears as he gently placed a hand on his baby's tiny head. "I can't thank you enough," he said, his voice breaking. "You saved her. You saved my daughter." He looked up at Malik, gratitude pouring from him in waves. "You're a hero." Malik didn't respond with the words that were expected of a hero. He just gave a small nod, the weight of the moment settling around him. He hadn't acted for praise or recognition. He had simply done what needed to be done. But there was something deeply humbling about the millionaire's words, about the raw emotion that Robert was clearly experiencing. For a brief moment, the two worlds of Malik and Robert Whitmore seemed to collide, one boy's quiet courage bridging the gap between them. Robert placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "I'm sorry this happened, and I'm so grateful you were here. What can I do for you?" His voice was desperate for some way to repay the boy for saving his daughter. Before Malik could speak, people who had witnessed the rescue began to gather around, many of them recording the moment on their phones. The crowd, which had been tense moments ago, was now filled with admiration for the boy who had acted swiftly and selflessly. Their voices were filled with praise, some asking Malik's name, others congratulating him for his quick thinking. Malik, ever humble, simply turned his attention back to the stroller, making sure the baby remained safe. Within hours, the video of the rescue had gone viral. The footage, showing the boy pulling the stroller away from the platform's edge just as the train sped past, was shared across social media platforms. Comments flooded in, praising Malik's bravery. People from all walks of life lauded him for his calmness under pressure, his ability to think clearly in the face of danger. The public was captivated by the footage, and news outlets picked up the story almost immediately. Headlines read, "Young Hero Saves Baby at Subway Station," and "Black Boy's Heroic Act Defies Expectations." The story quickly spread, becoming a topic of national conversation. Activists and community leaders shared the video, emphasizing the significance of Malik's actions and calling attention to the way young people of color are often overlooked or underestimated. They praised Malik for defying stereotypes and showing extraordinary courage in a moment of crisis. However, the focus on Malik's heroism was soon followed by questions about the nanny and Robert Whitmore's assistant. How had they allowed such an oversight to happen? How had they been so careless? News outlets were quick to highlight the negligence of the adults involved, questioning how they had failed to notice the baby was missing until it was almost too late. The Whitmore family, once untouched by the harshness of the public eye, was suddenly under scrutiny. The nanny's position was immediately questioned, and Robert Whitmore's reputation, which had been largely untarnished, began to take a hit. The scandal only grew as the video continued to circulate, and the once composed businessman found himself publicly apologizing for the negligence, unable to escape the sharp criticism that followed. But amidst all the media frenzy, one truth remained clear. Malik had saved a life that day, and that, more than anything, was what resonated with the public. The following day, as the sun began to set over the city, Malik's world shifted once again. He was at home, quietly eating dinner with his mother, when a knock at the door interrupted the otherwise calm evening. Malik's mother, who'd been busy preparing a modest meal, looked up in surprise. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. She opened the door cautiously, and standing in the doorway was none other than Robert Whitmore, the millionaire businessman. Malik's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected to see Robert again, especially not like this. Robert wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a lawyer who was holding a thick folder. As the millionaire stepped inside, his face was filled with gratitude and determination. "Good evening," Robert said warmly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Malik's mother, still shocked, nodded. "Not at all. What brings you here?" Robert glanced at Malik, then turned his attention back to his mother. "I wanted to make sure that the young man who saved my daughter, and who, in turn, saved my family, was properly recognized." Malik's mother looked confused, but also intrigued, unsure of where this conversation might lead. Robert, sensing the tension, continued. "I'm here to offer something that I hope will help make things right. I want to show my appreciation for Malik's bravery." With that, Robert handed the lawyer the folder, and the man carefully opened it. He handed over several official-looking papers to Malik's mother. "This is a deed to a property in the heart of the city," the lawyer explained, his tone formal yet kind. "This home is now yours." Malik's mother stared at the papers in disbelief. A house," she stammered, looking at Robert. "What do you mean?" Robert smiled softly. "Yes, a house. A proper home, with enough space for you and your family. No more living in a cramped apartment, no more worrying about the future. I've also set up a trust fund for Malik's education, enough to cover everything, from school fees to college and beyond." Malik stood frozen, his eyes wide in disbelief. His family had never owned a home, and now here was this offer, a dream come true. But amidst his shock, a sense of hesitation began to settle over him. He had lived his whole life with a sense of pride in what he could earn, what his family could achieve through hard work. The idea of accepting such an extravagant gift felt foreign, as if he were betraying that sense of self-reliance. He looked up at Robert, his voice hesitant. "I don't know if I can accept this," Malik said quietly. "It's a lot. I don't want to take anything that's too much." Robert's expression softened. "Malik," he said, his voice steady, "what you did wasn't just about saving my daughter. It was about saving my entire world, my family. You showed me what true courage and selflessness look like. You changed my life, and I want to make sure you have the opportunities you deserve." Malik's mother, who had been watching the exchange in stunned silence, stepped forward and placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "You've always made us proud, Malik," she said softly. "This this could change everything for us. Maybe it's time we let someone else help." Malik looked down at the papers in his hand, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. For a long moment, he said nothing, as his mind raced. This offer was a chance to change everything, his family's future, his own future. But could he truly accept something so generously given? Finally, he looked up at Robert, his expression a mixture of gratitude and humility. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady now. "We'll accept. But we'll make sure to work for it, to make sure we never forget where we came from." Robert smiled, his relief palpable. "I wouldn't expect anything less," he said. "You'll always have my support." And so, with that simple but life-changing offer, a new chapter began for Malik and his family. The house, the trust fund, the opportunities, it all felt like a dream, but one that they would make a reality. And as they took the first steps into this new life, they carried with them the knowledge that kindness, bravery, and a willingness to help one another could turn even the darkest of moments into something brighter. The future was now theirs to shape. As the weeks passed, Malik and his family settled into their new home, which seemed to offer more than just a roof over their heads. It brought them a sense of security and hope for the future. Malik's mother, overwhelmed by the kindness they had received, began to embrace the opportunities that now lay ahead. They moved into the heart of the city, a far cry from the small, cramped apartment they had once called home. The new house, spacious and bright, symbolized a new beginning for the family, one that they never thought possible. Malik, now enrolled in a prestigious school, walked through the halls with his head held high, ready to make the most of his education. With the trust fund set up for his future, his dreams of going to college and building a successful life seemed more attainable than ever before. For the first time, he could look ahead with excitement and confidence, knowing that his hard work and perseverance had led him to this point. The struggles that had once defined his life were now in the past, and his bright future was within his grasp. Meanwhile, Robert Whitmore, deeply moved by Malik's bravery and humility, found himself reflecting on his own life. Inspired by the young boy's actions, Robert became an advocate for supporting underprivileged families. He used his influence and wealth to fund initiatives that provided opportunities for those in need, particularly for children who, like Malik, showed incredible potential but lacked the resources to reach it. He spoke at conferences, met with policymakers, and worked to change the system that often overlooked the most vulnerable members of society. Robert's transformation from a wealthy businessman to a philanthropist who genuinely cared about making a difference was a testament to the lasting impact of Malik's selfless act. The final shot of the story shows Malik walking past the subway station, where posters now adorn the walls, celebrating his heroic rescue. As he strolls through the familiar place where his life had been forever changed, a content smile spreads across his face. The subway station, once a place of chaos and uncertainty, now stood as a symbol of hope and inspiration. His story, his courage, and his humility had touched the hearts of so many, and his actions had sparked a ripple effect that would continue to inspire others for years to come. Malik had proven that one small act of kindness could change the course of not just a day, but a lifetime. And as he walked forward, he knew that no matter where life took him, he had already made a difference in the world.